Chapter 13a Reflection, Parallel Keys, and the Logic of the Subconscious. The time it happened was a Saturday afternoon. Yes, on none other than International Women's Day. Shouldn't you go to the Capitol, join the March 8th parade, and support all women in their just struggle against the awful men, oppression, and discrimination? Why aren't you yourself a full-blooded feminist? Of course I am a feminist. But perhaps the more secular, humanistic, and self-regulating kind. That is, a rational and reasonable feminist without extreme expressions to the right or left, and thankfully without piercings or blue hair. Probably an annoyingly lukewarm pacifist with an open door to variation and self-assertive open-mindedness. A kind of Mediterranean sailor with a steady course for the Suez Canal and the Promised Land, the land of smiles, on the other side of the globe. Just a small journey first. The first paragraph of this story is a digression, but the facts about the date and event are relevant. Because that Saturday afternoon I was standing by the kitchen counter, looking out the window, observing a squirrel leaping from branch to branch. I smiled and continued with the stew, bean and lentil soup with pieces of meat. A calm melody chiseled its way clearly out of my subconscious, hum-able, old-fashioned, unrecognizable but still familiar. What should I do? Of course, go to the piano, try to figure out more. Get to know the melody. Immediately the harmonies followed. They were simply there, effortlessly, fitting perfectly. Small building blocks with rhythmic structure were tested out. What about form? That too came quickly, as if it had existed before the idea itself. Why so simple? No reason to overthink. Better to sit down at the digital score on the laptop and engrave the notes as quickly as possible before my faltering memory ran off with the idea. The rough work. Write a harmony-bearing piano part and dot in the melody above. Completely unreflective, almost automatic. I wrote down the notes as I remembered the composition, especially the melody from my inner self at the kitchen counter. It went surprisingly easily, and the score swelled into several pages. It was Saturday evening, and perhaps I should do something else. But why? Isn't this activity just as worthwhile as marching in the women's parade on Karl Johann's Gate? Funny thing about true engagement. It's captivating. The feeling of hunger disappeared, even though the smell of food from the kitchen reached the desk and screen. My appetite for consuming the freshly baked piece of music took precedence. A few hours went by. Editing and layout unfortunately take a lot of time apart from the actual composing. But that's true for everyone except Keith Jarrett. He just plays straight in. And what he makes sells in the millions. What a guy. But what about this process, this creative process? Why was it so seamlessly simple? Where did the music come from? I leaned back and let the score play itself. With a dal segno asterisk repetition, the duration came to 5.5 minutes. In a driving 6/8 rhythm, the music felt lawful. There was something about the functional harmonic structure that seemed natural, as if there were no real alternatives other than micro-level changes to the same main framework. I was rather surprised by this phenomenon, because I considered myself the originator of the melody. Some might argue that it could just as well have been generic, common, lacking individuality and particular originality. I could understand that criticism. Clearly, there was something recognizable. But isn't it true that everything that's created has something recognizable about it? I didn't think much more about it but had to admit that I looked forward to the next day, to listening with a refreshed mind and attentive ear to this generic song. Early Sunday morning around 5 o'clock, I woke from a strange and complicated dream. It was about solving problems, several at once. A kind of quantum mechanics task where multiple processes ran simultaneously and had to be solved simultaneously. I had to give up. But the remnants of the dream led me back to the melody from the day before. And asterisk voila, the harmonic, the tonal functional was resolved in a moment. I had intuitively used parallel keys, especially median relationships, but with a firmly anchored root tone in the main key. The root lay like a heavy pedal tone throughout, as Bach often does towards the end of his mighty oratorios. But with the difference that the pedal tone usually heralds the arrival of the dominant at the very end of the work, typically a long, sustained dominant crowned with a asterisk tierce de Picardy asterisk in the main key. Not only that, this Sunday morning offered an explanation for why parallel keys on the median level fit like hand in glove, even with massive use of dissonant harmonies that, strangely enough, didn't sound dissonant at all.